we are here to build a community to share and encourage one another on the challenges and the issues faced during this pandemic season, and to let you know that you are not alone. We can go through all this together. This series of live events is organized by Eirini Counseling, powered by ENCM. For the benefit of those who may be your first time joining us, Eirini Counseling is a non-profit counseling and mental health service for the community, regardless of religion, ethnicity, social and economic status. We provide professional counseling and therapy for individuals, couples, and families. Heart-to-Heart series of talks centralized on mental health well-being with the goal to provide support and care through awareness and sharing of life experiences from professionals in the field of mental health, as well as individuals who are going through similar challenges in this trying time. As we are encountering the increased number of cases of suicide and mental health conditions throughout the nation, we believe that it is timely for us to create this avenue to cater for the needs of the community. We hope that you will be blessed and encouraged by the sharing as we gain practical insights while braving through this storm together. Thank you and welcome again. A warm welcome to all of you who are joining us, or maybe you have just logged in. Thank you for joining us tonight. I believe that you will see on your screen that we have this poll. There are 2 questions on the poll. If you could, maybe you just help us fill up that, because we just want to gauge the audience that we have. All right. Okay. Hi, my name is Angela. I'm the host for tonight. It is a pleasure that we have David and Serene, all both from the founder and the co-founder of Redfield Properties, to be with us here tonight. I remember when I first approached both of them to see if they can be the speakers for this topic. David was there's a bit of reluctance from David, because he asked me a question. He said, Angela, if I do this, you know that I'm washing dirty linens in public, right? So it's that's some form of humility, and he has to, take its pride away to do this sharing with us. And I really appreciate that. David and Serene has been married for 38 years with 3 beautiful daughters and 2 grandchildren. Right. Hi, David and Serene.
Hello.
Hi. How are you tonight? Right. Okay. I will pass the floor to you. You want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah. Well, David and Serene here, my dear wife, and we are, as Angela introduced, the founders of Redfield Properties. That was about 37 years ago, and actually in 2 days' time, we will be celebrating our 38 years wedding anniversary. Wow, I got it right.
Well done. Congratulations. It is not easy to stay married for so many years. Yes. And I'm sure for those who are married, you know what I mean. Right. Okay, David, thank you for joining us, accepting our invitation to be the speaker. Okay, the reason why we have this topic on marriage, and the topic of this is the good, bad, ugly truth of marriage. It's because we know that it is not easy to sustain a marriage, both coming from different background, and especially in times like this during the pandemic and with the lockdown, the cases of divorce actually went up, especially like in Wuhan. Right after the 2 months of lockdown, people were actually lining up in front of the government's bureau to file their divorce papers, and there is evidence of all the increase of divorce cases. And I personally have a lot of clients calling me up to ask me questions about how do they go about filing divorce papers in court and all this. Yeah, so we really see that there's a need to have a platform where you can, share with us in your 38 years of marriage, how did you do it? Right. Let me start off with this question. What is the one challenge or one thing that you find challenging that you have already worked through, or you are still working on it in your 38 years of marriage? If you have, can just share with us.
Okay, I think I'll start. I think one of the things in the journey of our marriage that we would find challenging is definitely in the realm of good communication. I think communication is really a very big word. Just to relate the challenge, just not too long ago, a few months ago, I shared in the church, and after sharing, later on, one of the church staff called me or texted me to ask me for the bank details so that they could give me a love gift. And the following day, I told Serene, I said, so-and-so has asked for our bank details. Could you just send the bank details to them so that they can bank in the necessary amount as a love gift to me, And she started giving me her opinion. But if you know our history, I sometimes don't think it's an opinion, but I think she can be pretty directive. If you know her personality, she can be a driver, and sometimes she can drive me up the wall. And so I can't remember all the details, but I said something back to her, and then sparks started flying. And then before we know it, we were in an argument. Now, just before that, you had already invited us for a talk like this. And actually, to be truthful to you, Angela, I told her, I said, actually, what to talk about challenges. My marriage is very good, lately, And then this came about. I think it was a pretty heated argument. I won't go too much into the details, but it led me to bring up another issue, which was one time in the car while we were driving. And this is not a one-time thing. Oftentimes when we are at the junction or crossroads, I would like to go one direction, and she would use her hand to tell me where to go. And again, sometimes inside me I say, why you're so directive, And so I didn't say anything at that point of time, and I sometimes just to have the peace, because I think sometimes in the emotions that are stirred, how shall I say, the communication may not be the best. And so at the back of my mind, I don't want to end up in a quarrel or an argument. But I think if things are oftentimes swept under the carpet, it will come to a breaking point where there will be a bursting, there will be an overflow. And so it happened that day when we were arguing over this, it went to that. And I said to her, I said, you're oftentimes telling me how to drive, where to drive, or where to drive to, which direction. Why don't you take the driver's seat? And so when after the whole thing finished, and that's what I mean by communication is a challenge, where I sometimes don't deal with the issue one at a time, simply because maybe I want to compromise and I want the peace. And I also think the other thing that I oftentimes find very challenging, because I told Serene many times, sometimes even in the heat of the argument, I say I'm still human. I am an emotional being. And when I'm stirred up and I'm in a conflict or an argument with you, it is very hard for me to deliver the message well and communicate gently. So communication oftentimes mingle with emotions that are high. I find very, very challenging. Yeah.
Thank you, David, for sharing that. We can feel your challenge as you are sharing it. It's definitely the intensity of that. Yeah, right. It is no surprise that if you were to look at the researches shown for divorces, there are mainly three main reasons why marriages fail. Ranked the top number one reason will always be communication, followed by drifting away, and followed by having too much argument or too much conflict in the marriage. So these are the three main reasons for where a marriage actually breaks down. So you are in that pool, because communication is really a key to whether we master our marriage or it goes down the drain. What about you, Serene? What do you find very challenging in the whole 38 years?
For me,
oh, I can see that Serene can't wait to speak already.
a lot today, just no joking.
Go take the floor.
Okay. I think in my early marriage, I already actually have this in my heart, that recognizing that my role is to support my husband. These three main areas: at work, at home, and in ministry, where we do together. So because of this multitasking, and having to wear different hats and at different time, bringing to the marriage table our unique giftings, our personality, our strengths, I always wanted to bring and complement one another. Means we want to complete one another, whereby instead of competing with one another. So when I say complete and compete, so I frequently tell my premarital couples that we do marriage counseling for our church, where where I always tell them that the only difference between complete and compete is this one letter L. So I always tell them that the letter L is I call it love. So primarily for me, love is a commitment based on what God has done and girded by emotions, positive emotions that we talk about, choose to love, choose to contribute to the relationship and not in a selfish manner, and bring our best to the table in our marriage. But obviously, that we work together, right? It is not easy, because it is something that there will be conflicts. And I have learned that over the 38 years, learning how to manage it well, manage in the sense that work through it, communicate clearly if as best as I can, and in such a way that, especially during high emotions, try not to argue so much and avoid clashes. But obviously, this is something that when you see things differently, when you have different opinions, different way, different style of leadership, with all this mixed emotion, obviously conflicts is inevitable, But I would say that over time, it's very tricky and dicey. But over time, over the 38 years, we have progressively honed in and then improve that enable us to foster a better skills in addressing this. Meaning to say that I think for me, that one area that I feel that I try not to look at a small, don't major on the minor, don't major on the minor. Let go, learn to forgive, learn to say sorry, some of these things helps me to manage, because recognizing that we are two different individuals, like David says, lots of flaws and weaknesses coming together. Obviously, it will bring about many differences. This is one area that I think it helps me, but one thing in the office that helps is because we play different role, and we have different portfolio. Can you imagine I work in an office? Obviously, we'll cross path, right? Many times that because we do different roles and different portfolios, it helps us to actually play on our strength, whatever giftings that we have. Like for me, I will take care of administration and accounts, which I like figures. He doesn't like or pass on to me, I do it, But for him, he will take care of sales and marketing, in that sense, lead, So this is how we sometimes divide, quote unquote, divide and rule, in the sense that we play with our giftings.
Right. Okay, so for you, it is also communication as well. But you have also, through all these years, you have sorted out. I mean, you have found ways to work on it, and you have adjusted to one another. Okay, right. What about you, David?
Sorry. Yeah.
The very fact that you find that communication is always a challenge for you. Have you gotten a solution or work on it, or successfully, like you have from grade 1, you have improved to grade 2 and grade 3?
I really think we are at the best time of our lives in the journey of our marriage. I think Serene will also testify to it, that the last 5, 10, 15 years has been much richer than in our earlier years, We improve a lot in communication because there are many common grounds we have. We serve together in the similar ministries, and oftentimes, actually every morning, I think, we have breakfast together where we will have really good, rich conversations with one another. We will talk about sometimes work. Serene is a very early riser, and I think to a certain extent I am too. And so we do what we call for Christians our quiet time. And then oftentimes we will exchange notes as to what you felt God had spoken to you, and for myself as well. And I find those are very enriching times. You know, having a meal of a breakfast, a simple breakfast in the home, or sometimes outside as well. But of course, lately it's very difficult. But yeah, those are really enriching times. We find common things like loving to do walks or jungle trekking, you know, and those days we used to go Bukit Tiara, and on the way, I would cherish those times in the car where we will talk and coming back as well, simply because when we walk, I normally walk faster than her. So we won't be walking together unless we intentionally say we want to walk together, either to pray or have a chat, you know, and that's okay, right? So there are many things we do in common that really has enriched this marriage and improved the communication so much more better. Yeah.
What about times where there is a communication breakdown? What do you do? Do you have cold walls? If you have, then what happened?
For us, as we talked about it also, we don't have any recollection where we have really long periods of breakdown of communication. We believe that if communication is not sorted out, then most times the marriage will be in trouble. It will obviously lead to a complete breakdown and eventually to a divorce. I am a person that I'm very practical, and I would insist oftentimes, I know I'm using a strong word here, but I would insist that we have conversations, we talk, because I believe that the day any one of a spouse would say, no, I'm not talking, we are in big trouble. And so a continuous communication or a conversation is very important. Like I told you just now, you know, the incident in the first question you posed to me, I didn't complete it because after that, it was in the heat of the thing where Serene said, I want time out. I think it's not a right time to talk. And so I backed off. I respected her. And then the following day, I think it's the following day, I came back to her and I initiated the talk. Now, let me tell you this, for a man to initiate a talk after a heated time, it takes quite some humility to ask your wife to come, and then sometimes you have to say sorry, and sometimes after sorry, the wife will ask you, what are you really sorry about? It is like bowing down, then she will tell you, bow down another 2 more feet, you know. And so I find oftentimes the hindrance to communication is this word called ego or pride. And I don't think it's the sole domain of a man, but I think it is also in a woman's life. But I would think that most times I initiate is because I believe a man leads. That's the role God has given to me. And therefore, if there is any breakdown, I should initiate. Yeah.
I think when you mentioned that you say sorry and then your wife say, what are you sorry for? I would see a lot of smile and glimpse at the faces of the wives, because I think most of the wives here would have already, you know, experienced that before, and it's not so familiar. Right. Right. So it's beautiful that you know, you actually pointed out that it takes a lot of humility and you have a lot of pride also to come down and say sorry, and someone to be questioned like, what are you sorry for? So you have to elaborate and detail it out. Yeah, that's a lot.
Can I add a bit?
Sure.
Because I recognize that we are both different in the way we manage conflicts, the way we respond, the time that we need, So for him, he is what I call a rhinoceros, a rhino. I'm a hedgehog. I would, if it's, let's say I cannot manage, I would like to take time off. Let me work at it. Let me process through. Let me go and give me some time to settle down. For him is, no, I want to settle it now. But it took us a little while to understand, to respect the space. So in the sense that in my earlier age stage of our marriage, we didn't understand, how are we wired, so because then we end into more problem or more conflicts. But over time, we have developed the skill and understand. So we give space, we come with understanding, and allow one another some time to process through. That helps. That really helps.
So understanding the habits of communication, the way of communication, the way your spouse communicate, and giving that space that your spouse needs is actually very helpful in communication.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, from the research that we studied on marriages, on breakdown of marriages, the communication which ranked number 1 for a marriage to break down, there are 4 main areas that where number 1 will be a lot of criticism. When there's a lot of criticism, where you criticize the act of where your spouse failed to do, and there is also contempt, where you not only criticize the act that your spouse failed to do, you add on to attack his or her personality. That is among all the 4, that's the deadliest of all. And then another one will be defensiveness. When we start to be very defensive, that's where we kill off communication, because when we defend, we are telling our spouse that, hey, I'm like that because you are guilty of that. You make me that way I am. And the 4th one is actually stonewalling. And stonewalling is also very tough, because if your spouse is not communicating, that will probably be no way out, unless you can find a way for both of you to communicate, to solve and to handle your conflict. Right. Thanks for sharing that, the challenge that you have for the 38 years and you're still working on it. Tell us, maybe share with us one thing that, or one incident or one event that your husband or your wife did for you that is so memorable that you will forever remember. And as I invite David and Serene to share on this, for all those who have just joined us and who are in the chat, maybe you can also take some time off to think of one thing, the one thing that your husband or your wife did for you that you will forever remember because it left such a good memory.
I share.
Yeah, David, would you? Who will I share?
I will share first. I will share first. Okay. That I think many years back, I think he initiated one wedding anniversary getaway, which is in Banyan Tree, Phuket. It was something that, because it's not him, because he will normally leave to me to do all the things and won't initiate in terms of these kind of things, because he don't like to go for details, but he took it upon himself to actually call his friend, find out what's the best place to take my wife, and he made the arrangement, and we really go for that so-called getaway for 4 days, 3 nights. It was something very memorable, because recognizing that the effort that he made, the thoughtfulness, that really, the message sent to me was very affirming, because I also learned that I have discovered his love language, how to communicate to him in such a way that he feels loved. And I also have this love language that I really appreciate acts of service and words of affirmation. So in that, he actually met these 2 points for me, whereby he did acts of service, arranging all those things, and then affirming me that I am important, I'm valued, So likewise, it fills my emotional bank lah. And also it fills his emotional bank, because we spent the 4 days, 3 nights there. It was a time that a good quality time, because his love bank is quality time and physical touch. It was like a good time for us to get away, to refresh ourselves, and to really renew the relationship. So I think this is something that, as a result of that, and some of these practices that we put, we normally put in place some of these things to enhance our marriage.
Right.
So
you know where we have live stream and people talk and people will comment by putting in the emoji, the love emoji. As you were talking, I could feel all this love emoji coming out, and I have also caught some myself. It must be so memorable that I think you felt so loved because he showed you the way he loves you, using the love language that that's how you feel love. That's very beautiful. David, what about you? Are you all ready?
Yeah. I'll just quickly share two incidences. One that didn't, I think didn't last long. Was that I was.
You just have to outdo it. You just have to outdo her, is it?
I just felt it didn't last long because, but it was memorable because I was driving and I'm not too clear all the details again. But for some reason, Serene looked at me and she was sitting at the passenger side and I was a driver, and she said, "You know, David, I feel very fulfilled as a wife." And to me, it was like, wow, But after some quarters, I felt maybe didn't last very long, very long. But it really impacted me, that I can still remember till today.
Magical.
Yeah. But of course, my pursuit is still that she will be a fulfilled wife, definitely. And I think God has really blessed us with a richer life as the years go by. I think the other one that is very memorable and I would even say impactful is that I think about maybe 13, 15 years ago, my mother had a stroke, quite a severe one, and she was paralyzed. And then initially bedridden, and initially we didn't know what to do but to send her to a nursing home and started finding out everything about this and about nursing home. But eventually, I think after a year, we decided as a family, and it has to do a lot with Serene, my wife, making a major decision to decide to have my mother come back to our home and for us to look after her. And why I say this is because Serene will be the primary caregiver to my mother. And my mother is very, very important to me because she's my mother and I love her very much. And I think during some of my darkest moments in life, she was always there for me. But my mother was very unfortunate to have a stroke that really caused her to be bedridden. And, my mother in that stroke, we in our ignorance thought that not how long she will last, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. My mother, thank God, she lasted 12 years. But it took 12 years of hard work for Serene to take up this responsibility as my wife to look after my mother. Of course, definitely she had our helper who was also very helpful to Serene as well. But I remember many occasions that whatever holidays we have to make, whatever things we have to plan, and that's normally Serene's portfolio, she will think of my mother, who will be there to look after her. And I also know many times that she will have to do the cleaning for my mother, changing the pampers and bringing her to the bathroom. I'm really amazed at the love Serene has shown to my love over the 11 to 12 years. Yeah.
Wow. That's a long time for a daughter-in-law to take on the shoulder to care for your mom. Yeah, because it could be pretty challenging.
Yes.
Mother-in-law and mother is a different.
Yeah.
For otherwise we will know what it means, right? It is. Yeah. It is. She has done a lot for the 11, 12 years to take care of your mom, right? Thank you, Serene, for that. Right. You mentioned earlier, both of you mentioned earlier about love language. Maybe Serene, can you just go through one more time? What are the 5 love language?
Okay. I discovered this book for 5 love language written by Gary Chapman. The 5 love language is quality time, words of affirmation, gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. And each one of us have got this primary love bank, we call it. It needs to be filled first. Doesn't mean that the 5 love language, the rest of it you don't have, but we do have. But there will be 1 or 2 primary. When you feel that love bank, you'll be very, you feel that you are communicating to the person and meeting the person's most important love bank needs that I call it. So I find that it's very helpful. It also helps me with my children, because when I discover, it helps me to communicate the love to my children in the way they feel love. So it helps me. It helps me because I'm not a very expressive person. I'm very logical. So I have to learn. I have to discover, to learn, so that I'll be able to speak the love language.
For those of us who are still listening, I would like you to, there are 5 love languages, like she said, quality time, gifts of love, physical affection, words of affirmation, and act of service. Maybe you can just type in your chat box, what is your love language? If your husband or your wife is just next to you, make sure they look at you when you type so that they get the message, what is a love language. Basically, then you're telling them that this is how I feel love. If you do this, then I feel love. So that your emotional bank can continue to be built and have a surplus and not a deficit. All right. Jen's one is act of service. Right. Wow. So quite a number of act of service, 5 languages. Oh, I thought somebody said she needs all 5 to be demonstrated. Right. Words of act of service, quality time, words of affirmation. Yeah, it's true. It's not only applicable for our spouse, it's also applicable to our children, and even, as a matter of fact, to whoever in a relationship. Right. Okay, for all these 38 years, I'm sure you will have your ups and downs in your marriage. Have you ever at least one time, thought of calling it quit?
You can share first.
Okay, I think definitely no, because of my own personal faith. In the Bible that I believe is God's word, it is said that God hates divorce. And so I also link to the vows I made on the marriage day. It is to death do us part. And that's number 1. And I also think that in spite of the difficult marriage my parents went through, they nevertheless demonstrated that they still stuck together all the years till they left planet Earth. So I had, in that sense, a good role model as well. And also, Angela, my deep conviction is that changing partner will not solve my relationship problems. I believe that relationships are meant to last. And also, I believe that if there are any flaws in any one of us, I think it is very important that we stay to be better people than to quit. I have a wisdom proverb from the Bible that says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And so I find, I tell my wife this, in the early days when I was a bachelor, I had other people through conflicts that I get to be a better person. But I say, now you are my sharpest iron, I'm stuck with you, but you sharpen me. You make me a better person. I really think a big part of character formation that my God wants to do in my life, he would use my spouse or my wife. And so I think if I quit, I'm just running away with my problem and wanting to enter into another relationship. I don't think it will work. That's my personal conviction.
Right. Wow. I think you made a statement. I think that's very powerful. Changing partner will not solve the problem that you have. Yeah, because that's what more often than not, a lot of us think that by changing our partners, we actually solve that problem, but it's actually deep down within us. Right. What about you, Serene?
For me is I think David has talked about the core value and beliefs, and I do adhere to that. I feel that because of our core value and beliefs, that we feel that divorce and quitting is not the way to go, because having this core belief to know that God is our centrality in our relationship, and the commitment, the conscious commitment that we made and the vow that we make with one another, is not something that it's not a feeling where you say, a feeling alone. It is actually a commitment to love, whatever it may be. We can work out in a relationship with God being in the center. This is our faith and our belief. And then the second thing is also because we have seen marriages because of divorce. Marriage is not just between both of us as couple. It actually has extended family. It impacts other people. Like if you have children and your parent-in-law or extended family or community at large, let's say if you choose to walk out, the impact is enormous because it can cause a lot of emotional pain and hurts and trauma that actually is a lifelong thing, can be damaging for the individual. And sometimes we don't see it as immediate because I think it's because through our experience and we see it, we hear it, the people that we know, we can see couples, when they take that step, it has caused destructive, dysfunctional homes that sometimes difficult and cause a lot of pain, emotional wounds that needs time to heal, and it is something that I think I don't wish to see.
Right. Yeah. I like what both of you said, that quitting is not the way to do it, because it is a lot of times we would think that quitting, getting out of marriage is the only way to end our pain. And then now that the legal fees for divorce, a consented divorce at least, is actually relatively and comparatively a lot cheaper than getting married. You spend like 100,000 to get married, to have a wedding, the whole ceremony. You probably spend about 3,500 to 5,000 for a consented divorce. And the time frame is looking at is about 3 to 4 months, and the whole thing is over. But I think in terms of monetary cost, that cost could be quite low. But the cost beyond it for a divorce to take place, it's something that we may not even be aware until such a time where we go through it, then we realize, wow, the cost for a divorce is actually very huge. That leads us to the next question. Then what then? If they are stuck in a marriage and if they only know the only way is to walk out, but at the end of it, if you were to walk out, there are so much consequences, like you said, the damaging effects on the divorced individual and also on the children as well. So many emotional hurts and all this. So then what should they do? What would you suggest?
You want to say first? I think it's for me, I think that don't keep quiet. I believe that address the issue earlier. Don't let it procrastinate and sweep under the carpet long enough, because if conflicts are unresolved, can lead to a lot of resentment, a lot of hurts and bitterness. I think reaching out for help as and when required, is important. Perhaps I think having a support group, somebody trusted that or maybe if it is really come to a point that address it and go to a marriage counselor or marriage therapy. Go for marriage therapy that will help you journey. Somebody to come alongside to help you process through, help you journey through. That will be great. I think for those who are Christians, I believe that you can reach out to your church, your pastors, your counselors, or your mentors. Some of these are able to support you through.
Right. So seeking help with professional help, or getting a support group, even like friends that you can trust, getting that support from them is very important, instead of going through it alone and thinking that the divorce may be the only way out. Yes. Try out the help first before we even choose that path of going for divorce, because the cost of divorce may not be something that we are aware of and may not be something that we want to take. Right. All right. David, I have this question to ask. You mentioned just now that one of the reason you would not think of quitting your marriage was because you think your parents left a good model for you, that even the marriage was not a fantastic one, they chose to stay in marriage. What does that mean to you as a child?
What does that mean to me as a child?
Yeah.
I'm still trying to understand the question. Sorry, my apologies.
The very fact that your parents did not, even the marriage could be rocky, but the very fact that they chose to stay on instead of going their own separate way. When that happened to you, does it bring a lot of comfort to you that they are still together even though there are problems? Does it bring a lot of assurance that no matter what, they are still together, you still have a family?
I think definitely my dad sticking to my mom all these years in spite of to a degree his unfaithfulness in his earlier years, I think has meant a lot to me, because that would say to me that at least he values family. And I think that's very important. So, therefore, I because like what Serene said, I believe if couples head for divorce, it is going to be, especially if there are children involved, it is going to be very, very destructive. Actually, I wanted to say that though I didn't come from parents that went for divorce, but in the home that I came from, there were actually numerous quarrels. And I remember one time there was such a huge fight and quarrel after my dad came back drunk one late night. It was like the drama for the whole neighborhood. And there was fightings on the ground floor because it was a 2-story pre-war house. And I remembered me and my 4 older sisters were literally shivering. And it was traumatic for us. And I'm just saying this based on the fact that my parents didn't even divorce. But just having that kind of fights, conflicts, and huge quarrels kind of tore our world apart. And I really believe those things brought a lot of pain, woundedness, emotional woundedness, and traumas in our lives that has affected my 4 sisters and I for many, many years. And actually for me, during my teenage years, I drifted into drug addiction, but thank God, God found me and I came out of it, But what I'm trying to say, dysfunctional families and breakups and divorces can be tremendously painful, not only for the couple, but like what Serene said, for the people around them, especially the children, because our parents are our world, and if they are separated apart, it just tears our world apart. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for answering that. Yeah, I saw some of the comments on the chat box and questions like, what if, you mentioned about marriage counseling and all this. So there were questions like, what if the other half, does not want to go, and there's just an introvert personality due to ego and all this. I think do you have any advice on that if the other spouse are not willing to seek help? What would your advice be?
I think is first and foremost, I think for me is I would come from an angle that I would try, because I think I would try on my part to do my part, to change. It's just like when we always have this principle that they say that when we go into a marriage, we're not going there to try to change him, but I have to change myself first. Because I find that when you change yourself, your outlook of things would be different. It will help you to maneuver through. I'm not saying that that is the only way, but I'm just saying that I think it's important to look at ourselves first and then do what we can and see how we change ourselves first. Bring to the relationship what is we can offer.
So that will also mean that even if our spouse is not willing to seek help, it doesn't mean that we can't go, we can't seek help ourselves.
Yes,
We
that's
can
what
still go and seek help, go for marriage counseling, even as individual. As
Yes.
Elaine has also put that in the chat box. She's our licensed counselor in Eirini Counseling Services. Yeah, so even if it's a marriage problem, it doesn't mean that if your spouse is not willing to seek help, it doesn't mean that you can't seek help, because we can always start with ourselves, what we can do with ourselves, something that we have a choice and we can choose to do that. Yeah, right. Okay, next, that will lead me to the next question that I will have for both of you. With this pandemic, that we have all this confined space and stress level, it's all building up. And we get agitated, we get irritated easily, and then especially when we have limited space, and we tend to fight more between husband and wife. We may fight more, quarrel more, and the urge of if we are so stuck in, we feel we are so stuck in this marriage, the urge of choosing that way out, it's it's just at our hand, and we can just make that. What would your advice be?
You first. I didn't.
Yeah, go ahead.
You go first. Oh well, advice be. You go lah. You go.
What would the advice be if you? Well, for my life, if you're talking about a pandemic,
I mean, obviously, the quality of the marriage must have been deteriorating. It comes to a stage where when we have all this added stress, it can cause an eruption. It's actually adding on to the weight that we have on the marriage. Obviously, it was already built up from maybe for a long time, but with this pandemic, with the confined space and with this extra irritation, agitation, and frustration that we have, it just built up, and then eventually it may just erupt. Just as one short thing, one simple thing, it may just snap it. So it is not just the pandemic, but the pandemic add on to the weight of this already a deteriorating quality marriage.
Okay. Well, I think there is no quick fix. If I hear you correctly, that this has been built up over years, except that I can only say that couples should reach out for help. There is no quick fix because oftentimes it takes years of neglect, years of conflicts, drifting apart, bad communication, unresolved conflicts, unforgiveness, and I think we can go on and on, one layer after another. I can only say I quite believe that most times in such situations, couples will find quite close to impossible to disentangle themselves when they are in such knots. And really, I think external help is the best thing to do. But I'm not too sure in our culture in Malaysia and Asians in general, whether we are very open to reaching out to either professional help or other kinds as well, because I don't know, for us, oftentimes in the Asian culture, it's safe face, don't tell people, don't wash dirty linen in public, basically that, let us look nice and look good, so yeah. So I don't think there's any quick fix.
Right. What about Serene?
I think David has said it all.
Is to
I don't concur with him. I think the other thing is probably, if I hear you say that it's a pile-up thing. I think there are certain things that if it's within our capacity to solve, and this pandemic, the stress, it could be financial stress, it could be the space confined and cooped up in one place. I think some things, I think one need to reflect and review on their own to see that, are there things that they can actually change? Are there things that they can alter the environment, or probably make some adjustment that will actually require de-stress lah. And that would help, because sometimes when we are emotionally charged up and we are, there's those I call the stress level has gone is highest, we can be easily triggered. So some of these things can, if we within our capacity, we should look into it, how to actually make remedy lah. Then the rest get external help. I think that
I'm hearing
important, self-awareness.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Is it self-awareness, reflection of oneself is important to know where you are.
Right. So I am hearing a few keywords here. Number one is seek help. It's very important to seek help, external help. Don't just do it on yourself, because there are a lot of times where our emotions are so high, we can't really think rationally, and we say things, we do things that may leave some very long-lasting damaging effects. So seeking help is very important. And the second thing I'm also hearing again and again is like, what are the things that we can do? What's within our control? Do we want to do something about it? It's very much about our choice. Do we want to do something about it, or we just, play the blaming game and, it's my fault, it's his fault, it is this person's fault, that person's fault. Self-awareness and reflection is very important. Yeah, right. I think that will really help, especially when we can't control the other side, but what we have control is on our own, what we can do, how we want to deal with it. It's within our control, right? Okay. Before I go to the questions from the audience, let me just. There's these questions. Maybe I'll just ask a bit later. Is there anything that you think that you will want to leave with the couples before the end of this session? Something that you gain from your marriage, or some insight that you want to share with us?
Okay. I think maybe this is just my parting advice. Someone said men are complicated, women are complex. And so therefore marriage can be heaven on earth or hell on earth. And also I think from a Christian perspective, we are all fallen beings unless and until there's transformation. Two people coming together is never easy. I remember the pastor in 1982-83 who was Serene and my marriage counselor. I mean, today we do premarital counseling. We go through with people 13 lessons, but I think he only met us once or twice. What he told me, I never forgot. He told me in that counseling session, he said, David and Serene, he said when a person wants to become a doctor, he takes about maybe 4 years, 5 years. When a person wants to be an engineer, 3 years, an accountant, 3 years, or whatever. But you see, when people prepare to get married, they don't even read one book. And that stuck with me for a long, long time. So what is my advice? I really think everyone, whether single or intending to get married or even married couples, I think it's so vital to invest into your marriage by knowing what it is all about. Many times I think, and even for myself, the best model we can have are the parents that we have and the family that we are brought up in. Most times I think so. Very few people have got really excellent models of marriages. And I really think people need to invest into marriage. If not, you are going to find a very challenging and rocky road. For example, I think one needs to really go for seminars. One need to at least get some good books. If you are in problems, as we said earlier on, seek help, humble yourself. Don't let the ego and pride get in the way. Learn things like the 5 love languages. That's the book, you know, at least you try to understand about your spouse and your children. There's another good book called Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus. Understand personality profiles, you know. And for Serene and I, it is a continuous learning process and journey. We never stop. You know why? Because by being premarital counselors ourselves, I think today we have done more than 10 over couples over the years. And every time we do, every session we do, we spend 2 hours sharing our life story and topics relating to creating a healthy marriage. And I want to say this, it is obviously meant for the counselees or the couple they are preparing to be married. But let me say this, it is really also for ourselves, fresh reminders all the time that Serene and I, we need fresh reminders. We need strengthening in our marriage. It is so easy to have head knowledge, but it is so hard to have massive application. So easy to talk, but to walk the talk is another thing. So I find for Serene and I, getting into this kind of ministry, just doing free for people and getting a book, processing through, take many man hours, you know, a lot of effort to arrange and all this, but just to not only share the lessons in the book, but to share life with them. I think it's so tremendously a blessing to both of us. And that's why I think to a great extent, our marriage have lasted 38 years, you know, and personally, to continue to invest into my own marriage, I personally have an accountability partner that I meet every Saturday, at least for an hour to an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. And we ask provoking questions. We ask very tough questions, very, very tough questions. All right. So that keeps me on my toes as well. And I believe this in ending for this advice. It's so important to invest into your marriage. I believe no amount of success at work, in business, or in ministry can ever compensate for failure at home. Let me repeat again. No amount of success at work, in business, or even in ministry can ever compensate for failure at home. Now, let me say this one more time. Let me say this in ending. Who will be around us at our deathbed? I think I would want to see my wife there and my family there. They are very important. And I believe to have a successful marriage and a wonderful, rich family, we need to learn to invest into our marriage, and as what I have just advised. Yeah, thanks.
Right. So I'm hearing, I think you can't stress enough the word invest, but you repeated so many times. I thought I was in the property seminar we have to invest. The significance and the weight of it is that you have to invest in your marriage by reading up, attending seminar, seek help, learn the 5 languages, what really speak to your spouse and make him or make her feel love. Not the way you feel love, but the way he or she feels love. And understand, I like it when you also mentioned understand personality profiles, because by doing that, and in fact, there are a lot of personality profiles that we can do online, which is free. Because by doing that, we actually understand ourselves a lot better. We also understand our spouse better. There are a lot of things that we may not have given thoughts to ourselves or our spouse, the characteristic, the personality. Why does he behave this way? Why does he speak this way? But by doing the personality profiles where they will explain to you in very detailed scores and interpretation, it actually gives us a lot of light and understanding, and that helps a great deal in relationship. I really like that, to invest. Again, I'm just borrowing David's word, and I cannot stress enough that you must invest in your marriage, and no amount of work, business success can compensate failure in a marriage or family relationship, or can compensate a failure at home. I really love that. That is something that would be my aha today. Right. What about Serene?
I think he has said it all. I also, we both concur and have this values statement that, and also recognizing that investing in our relationship, in our marriage is very, very crucial. I would say that we should start from beginning, meaning to say that during a courting time, all the way through, you know, we need to actually spend time investing in it, learning, relearning, rediscovering one another, and discovering self, you know, and the unconditional willingness to work through the relationship. And then some of the things that we put in place is like we are quite we actually schedule our time where we have dating nights, we spend time together, we go away in the anniversary, we, like you say, he said, we do walks, we exercise together, we share quite a lot of common things. I find that having this common interest and something that it actually enable us to communicate things from our heart. Because when you share, it's from your heart. So I guess it's learning to talk, to communicate, not just at the space level, but communicate to the degree of the deepest desire from our heart. I think this is something that one need to learn. I think over time, the 30 years, we have learned to do that. We have learned.
I think a lot of times what happens is when for most of us, we are married for the first time. We are in this marriage for the first time. We are parents for the first time. Even if we have 3 kids, we are parents for the first time for the first kid, parents for the first time for the second kid. A lot of things we are going through, it's going through the first time. And we may not have good support system. We may not have friends. We may have good friends, but we may not have friends that will be able to journey through with us or give us sound advice on this, because everybody is also going through it the first time. So I think what David said and what Serene said, it's very important that when we invest, at least read up something about the marriage. When we go through the first time, we may feel helpless, and if we are going to stay where we are and not do anything, rest for sure, nothing is going to happen. You and I will know nothing is going to happen. But for me myself, when I pick up a book to read recently, I read about this theory for couple called Gottman couple theory, that talk about the 4 habits of communication, which they call it the 4 horsemen of apocalypse, that will actually, you can pretty much predict whether you're going to make it or you're going to kill the marriage. The 4 that I just shared with you just now, the communication habits, which is criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and also stonewalling. When I learned it, I myself, I'm married to my husband for about, I think, 20 years. But this is the first time I'm reading it, and it created so much awareness in the way I communicate. So yeah, this is investing time, investing efforts into reading up and doing something instead of just sitting there. I think I have sat long enough and nothing happened. It's either nothing happened or things got worse. But when I decided to invest and pick up that book and read just a little bit, which gave me so much insight, I think that's a very good point. Right, we have come to a time where we will take some questions from the floor. There was one question from the floor that say, just wonder if the relationship between the couple is so bad that they quarrel every other day, wouldn't it be more stressful for the children? Any one of you can answer that? You want to answer that? So it's like, it is so bad. My children is seeing us quarreling every day, fighting. Wouldn't that be more stressful than having us staying in the marriage?
I think, yeah, obviously, if a husband and wife is continuously in that kind of situation, I think the conclusion of children suffering is a foregone conclusion. As I shared my own story of my upbringing, it's a nightmare for children, nightmare for me. And I think I only heard that question, but I think if you really want to look for solution, I think if a couple really loves the family, they would have to be willing participants to look for a way out. Again, back to this issue of seeking help externally. I really think most times very bad marriages are very hard to be resolved by the two partners, very, very difficult. I believe a third-party intervention is so crucial and so needful.
Right. Right. That's one more question that was posted earlier. So the question is, how about those who have no religion or don't believe in any religion other than themselves? So what happened that, if they are in this feeling hopeless?
Well, yeah, I can say that I respect everyone with different faiths. And I also respect people who say that they don't have any religion or they choose not to believe in God. But I can only say that Serene and I, in our marriage journey, we really believe that it has grown to be very rich and very satisfying in every arena of our lives because of the God that we have come to believe in, because of the Bible that we believe is the Word of God and is the manual for living. And I want to say that a manual for living would include teaching us how to raise kids, teaching us how to
relate to others.
Yeah, relate to one another in our marriage as well. And I would have to say that has really helped us tremendously. I would shudder to think for ourselves. I want to only speak for ourselves because I know when it comes to beliefs, it can be a very sensitive topic. But I can only say it has brought tremendous transformation and change to our lives and has only made our marriage richer, really richer. You can check with Serene whether I'm lying or not. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm also hearing that a few words that you said just now, that you said the practical examples will be like reading up about how to raise your kids. I think those really help as well. Apart from the belief that you mentioned that it's your faith in God that has taught you this, something that you're also reading up is about how to raise your kids. And you have also mentioned a few times that seeking help from other people and seeking external help and getting support system, getting a good support system, and again, investing in your marriage by reading up, attending seminar. Those are going to help you in your marriage, right? Let's see if that's other. Okay, that's one question that says that what if kids have grown up and couples are still in toxic relationship?
Revisit the love relationship. I believe that if let's say the situation whereby the kids has grown up and the relationship is toxic, it has to do with the many years of unresolved conflicts as a result of drifting apart and many things that has been underlying. So I guess it's if a person I think it's like we talk about, I think if you decide to, I think we can still seek for help. We can still enrich the relationship. It's never too late. It's actually never too late. In fact, because of sometimes along the way in marriage, we have different responsibility, different roles, different seasons of life. It takes us away from focusing on one another and building the foundation of relationship. We drift apart. We live our different life. So this is very damaging. So, but for all after when the kids are all grown up, oh yeah, I'm so lonely. I don't know this guy, the man that I married. Why, like fallen out of love already? I think it's something that we can still work at it. It takes two parties.
When you mention this, it's like, yes, there are so many things that to do, to attend to, that you can actually be drifting apart. It just reminded me at one point of time, to come home, I fear to come home, because what it means is coming home means a lot of duties, a lot of responsibilities. It's just making me very tired, taking care of my husband, taking care of my kids, taking one kid only, okay, taking care of my son, taking care of my mom, taking care of my dogs, taking care of my kakak. It sounded to me, the whole thing, it's about duties and responsibilities. There's just no room for romance, no room for love. And by the time we settle everything, my husband will be dead tired already. He'll be snoring away, let alone a time to talk about, heart to heart talk. It is heart to heart, HARD to HARD. Yeah, so I think that's a good point.
Where does your husband work?
I have to ask permission to see whether I can review where does he work. Right. Okay. That's one more question. That will probably be our last question for tonight. At which point in time will you say that it is time to call it off, means divorce? Is there a breaking point that it is okay to be divorced?
I think for me, if it is my situation, and as I already shared, my own convictions and my convictions that are based on my faith, then there is no way out. But I also think that in reality, sometimes it can be so damaged, so toxic, that I want to be very real here and to get it right as well, that sometimes really going back to becoming single is probably the only alternative, rather than to be in such an environment. And for me to say no, because God says you all have to stay together, I don't think that is going to help the emotional health of any party for that matter. Because some things, I think for some spouses are not willing to change. And not only not willing to change, maybe that person may get worse, whether it's a husband or a wife. And I really think in reality, sometimes it's really, really impossible to live in that kind of environment. It will really, this time around, really drive you up the wall. Mine one was a joke, but this time I will really drive you up the wall. You become Spider-Man, But that's the reality, jokes aside, that's the reality, and that's why, I believe in this, Angela. I tell my girls, I say, if there is no man, I mean, as the father, I want to see all my children get married, but I don't think singlehood is bad. Really, I don't think so. I don't think it's inferior as well. But I say, if you desire to get married, then it is the father's wish that I will pray for that. But if there is no right man for you and it's going to bring disaster, I say anytime I will say, please remain single and be extremely happy, have a rich and satisfying life. It is very possible. Don't ever have this myth or this thinking that only married people are happy. Actually, statistics tells you a lot of married people are unhappy.
David, I almost want to say amen to that. Well, don't take it hard, but from the outside, outwardly you look very traditional. But to hear you saying something that is so untraditional, I think you have just validated a lot of the singles feeling, because of the Asian culture that we are in, our family pressure, that sometimes we get married for the sake of getting married. But you are so right to say that, if you are happy being a single, by all means. And I think you have just validated a lot of their feelings, a lot of their emotion, a lot of their thinking. Thank you for that. Serene, do we have anything to add to that?
Maybe I would like to add that in terms of, just now we said that just add if you are emotionally and physically being abused or there is harm, bodily harm, I think these are times that sometimes you have to retreat. Probably, sometimes beyond repair. So these are some things that I would like to add to what he says. I agree with what he says.
Sure. Thank you for all the sound and very good advice. To add on to that, I just want to share this. There's this theory called choice theory, where it says that all of us actually have a choice. More often than not, we feel very down, very depressed because we feel we are a victim of somebody's doing. We are a victim of someone's action, that we are trapped in that. We don't have the power to actually come out of it. And losing that power, where we don't have the empowerment, where we feel so powerless, is where it makes us feel very, very helpless and make us feel very hopeless. But the choice theory says otherwise. Actually, there are a lot of things we have control and we have a choice. The very fact that we are here most probably is because of the choice that we have made. The reason why we are making this choice A and not making choice B is probably because choice B comes with some consequences that we do not, or we may not, or we are not prepared to take. So thinking of that consequences that we are not prepared to take, and therefore it leads us to making this choice A at where we are. Is it really that we don't have a choice, or is it because between the choices we choose this because we are not prepared for the consequences of other choices? When we have that, when we are aware that we can actually make choice, there is empowerment. We are no longer a victim of somebody's doing, someone else's word, someone else's action. We are our own choice. And I think with that, with the choice that we have, the power that we have, it will actually liberate us a lot. And whether to stay in your marriage or to work on it or to go for a divorce, because it is relatively quite cheap to go for a consented divorce, is after all your choice. If you think through it, are you prepared for choice A, the consequence of choice A, or are you prepared for choice B and the consequence that's followed choice B? Is totally up to you, because we all have a choice. Right. Thank you, David and Serene, and that brings us to almost the end of our session. Thank you so much for your precious time. I really, really appreciate that.